Not every connection is covenant. Just because someone is standing beside you doesn't mean they are tied to your destiny. There are people who look close, who sound committed, who appear loyal. But when the storms rise and the seasons shift, you'll discover that their roots don't run deep. They were never covenant. They were simply convenient. They were never assignment. They were just attachment. And if you don't discern the difference, you will end up investing covenant energy into seasonal people, wondering why your soul feels bankrupt and your purpose feels delayed. Let me tell you something. God never designed you to carry everyone with you. Not every childhood friend will fit in your adulthood calling. Not every coworker who laughs with you at lunch is meant to walk with you in life. Some people are scaffolding necessary for the construction of a season. But when the building is complete, the scaffolding has to come down. If you try to keep what was meant to be temporary in a permanent position, you will not only weaken your structure, but you'll sabotage your growth. We waste too much time trying to convince people to love us, trying to prove our worth to people who were never ordained to see it. You don't need everyone to validate who you are. When you know you're chosen, you don't beg for recognition. When you know you're anointed, you don't plead for approval. Some people won't see you because they're not supposed to see you. Some people won't clap for you because their role was never to celebrate you. It was only to challenge you, to push you, or maybe to test how much you really believe in yourself. Stop mistaking proximity for partnership. Just because someone has been in your space doesn't mean they belong in your spirit. You have to understand that covenant relationships are rare. They are divine. They are sealed in purpose. Covenant doesn't crumble under pressure. Covenant doesn't vanish when the benefits dry up. Covenant doesn't disappear when the applause stops. Covenant stands, covenant fights, covenant remains. And I've learned that sometimes the pain of losing a person reveals the blessing of discovering they were never covenant to begin with. Because when God allows someone to walk away, He is not subtracting from your life. He is making room for the right connections to walk in. You see, destiny connections don't require you to shrink to be accepted. They don't require you to bend just to be tolerated. They don't demand you to lose yourself in order to keep them. Destiny connections breathe life into you. They push you forward. They make you better. The tragedy is that many of us stay stuck because we can't release people who were only meant to walk with us for a chapter. You keep reading a chapter God has already closed, wondering why the story feels stale. You keep holding on to characters who don't show up in the next scene, wondering why the narrative won't move. The truth is, the book of your life cannot unfold if you keep trying to drag yesterday's cast into tomorrow's plot. I need you to hear me. Not everyone can handle the weight of where you're going. Some people liked you in struggle, but cannot stomach you in success. Some people celebrated you in brokenness, but cannot bear you in wholeness. Some people were comfortable when you were silent, but get threatened when you find your voice. That's why you must know who is covenant and who is merely connection, because if you misidentify them, you will give access to the wrong people, and the wrong people will dilute what God is trying to amplify in you. So how do you know the difference? Pay attention to the fruit. Do they bring peace or do they bring chaos? Do they fuel your fire or do they drain your energy? Do they build your faith or do they feed your fear? The Bible says, by their fruits you will know them, and if the fruit is rotten, stop pretending the tree is healthy. If the fruit keeps poisoning your spirit, stop ignoring the signs. You don't need another confirmation. The evidence is in the fruit. And here's the power of it. When you finally realize not every connection is covenant, you stop bleeding energy into places that cannot heal you. You stop begging people who were never meant to bless you. You stop giving explanations to people who were never ordained to understand you. That's when your discernment sharpens. That's when your peace multiplies. That's when your destiny accelerates, because at the end of the day, you cannot fulfill your assignment if you keep making idols out of attachments. You cannot step into purpose. You keep bowing to people who were never called to cover you. You cannot grow if you keep watering dead plants. Some connections are simply not covenant, and the sooner you recognize it, the freer you will be to step boldly into the relationships that are truly designed to walk with you. Not every connection is covenant. There is a strength in silence that most people don't recognize. We live in a world that wants you to clap back, to explain yourself, to prove your point every time somebody misunderstands you or misrepresents you. But sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is to say absolutely nothing at all. Silence is not weakness, it is strategy. Silence is not surrender, it is wisdom. There are moments in life when your silence will roar louder than your words ever could. See, the enemy feeds on your reaction. He's not always after your possessions, he's after your peace. He wants to pull you out of character, drag you into arguments, waste your energy on battles that don't even matter. Every time you react, you invest. Every time you explain, you drain. Every time you clap back, you lose a little piece of the strength you need for the real fight. But when you hold your peace, when you choose not to respond, when you cut them off silently, you starve the chaos and you protect your spirit. There are some people who don't deserve a response because they already know the truth. They are not confused. They are committed to misunderstanding you. No matter how many times you explain yourself, they will twist it. No matter how carefully you speak, they will misinterpret it. And if you are not careful, you will spend your life trying to fix a picture they have no intention of seeing clearly. That's why silence is sometimes the only answer, because silence refuses to play the game. Silence says, you can talk, but I will not be moved. You can assume, but I will not be shaken. You can plot, but I will not participate. When you stop reacting, you take the power back, because as long as you react, you are playing on their terms. They push the button, you jump. They pull the string, you dance. They poke the wound, you bleed. But when you no longer react, you break the chain. You say, no, my peace is too valuable to be wasted on this. You say, my destiny is too heavy to be delayed by this. You say, I'm not going to let the noise of their voice drown out the sound of God's call in my life. Let me remind you, not every battle requires your sword. Some battles are won by silence. Some battles are fought on your knees in prayer. Some battles are defeated when you walk away and refuse to give them your energy. The proof of maturity is not in how quick you can defend yourself, but in how disciplined you are in guarding your peace. You don't have to clap back because God has already gone ahead of you. You don't have to respond because your fruit will speak louder than their lies. You don't have to fight every rumor because your life will outlive their gossip. The truth is, silence reveals character, both yours and theirs. When you don't react, you expose the motives of the other person. If they are genuine, your silence will not offend them. It will be understood. But if they are manipulative, your silence will frustrate them because they cannot control what they cannot provoke. That's why silence is such a weapon. It unsettles those who thrive on chaos, and it steadies those who trust in God's timing. I know it's hard. I know you want to defend yourself. I know you want to set the record straight, but ask yourself this: what do I lose by staying silent, and what do I risk by speaking? Sometimes the cost of explaining yourself is greater than the benefit of being understood. Sometimes it's better to let the lie run its course because the truth has a way of resurrecting itself. Time is the greatest witness, and silence gives time the chance to prove you right. There will always be people who misinterpret your silence as weakness, but that's because they don't understand the strength it takes to say nothing. It takes discipline not to respond. It takes maturity not to react. It takes vision to look beyond the moment and see the bigger picture. People who are ruled by impulse can't understand the power of restraint, but those who know they are called to destiny realize that every word, every reaction, every ounce of energy is too precious to be wasted on distractions. So instead of arguing, keep building. Instead of explaining, keep walking. Instead of reacting, keep rising, because the best way to silence your critics is with results. The best way to answer your enemies is with progress. The best way to shut down the noise is to let your life bear the kind of fruit that no rumor can erase. Cut them off silently. Peace is more precious than proximity. There comes a moment in your life when you realize that not everyone deserves access to your space. Not everyone qualifies for the seat they've been given in your life. We confuse closeness with value, thinking that just because someone has always been around, they deserve to always stay around. But let me tell you, peace will cost you proximity, and you've got to be willing to make the trade. There are some people who were fine when you were broken, who were comfortable when you were silent, who celebrated when you were smaller than who you really are. But the moment you start to grow, the moment you start to evolve, the moment you start to rise, they become restless. They loved you in pieces but cannot handle you in peace. And if you are not careful, you will sacrifice the peace of your present just to hold on to the proximity of your past. You have to guard your peace like it's treasure, because it is. Peace is what keeps you sane when the storms are raging. Peace is what steadies your heart when life feels uncertain. Peace is what clears your mind when the noise of the world is pressing in. You cannot buy it. You cannot fake it. You cannot borrow it. Peace is cultivated, protected, and preserved. And the greatest threat to your peace is often the people you keep too close. Have you noticed that sometimes it's not your enemies that drain you? It's the people sitting at your table. It's the friend you keep excusing, the relative you keep accommodating, the relationship you keep tolerating. And you tell yourself, I've known them too long to let them go, or we're family, so I can't create distance. But what good is proximity if it costs you your peace? What good is sharing blood if it keeps bleeding you dry? Sometimes the ones closest to you are the ones God is calling you to love from a distance, because peace is worth more than keeping company. Let me tell you something. You cannot carry out your assignment if you are constantly unsettled in your spirit. You cannot discern God's direction if you're distracted by constant drama. You cannot pour into others if your own well is polluted with chaos. And yet, how many times do we keep inviting chaos to sit down beside us simply because we're afraid to let go? We hold on to people who sabotage our peace and then wonder why we can't sleep at night, why we can't think clearly, why our spirit feels heavy. Peace is more precious than proximity. And here's the hard truth. Peace often requires separation. Separation doesn't mean you stop loving them. It means you stop letting them disturb the stillness God is building in you. Separation doesn't mean you're better than them. It means you're better without the turmoil they bring. Separation doesn't mean you're abandoning them. It means you're choosing survival, because peace is life. Without peace, you'll suffocate under the pressure of proximity. Look at Jesus. Even he pulled away from the crowd. Even he slipped into solitude. Even he separated himself from the noise to protect his peace and commune with his Father. If the Son of God needed space to preserve his peace, what makes you think you can survive without it? You don't need to apologize for protecting your spirit. You don't need to explain why you're stepping back. You don't need to justify why you're not as available as you used to be. Sometimes silence and distance are the greatest acts of self-preservation, and I know it hurts because separation always feels like loss at first. It feels lonely when you step back. It feels awkward when you stop engaging. It feels heavy when you finally cut that tie, but give it time. What felt like emptiness will soon feel like freedom. What felt like loneliness will soon feel like clarity. What felt like grief will soon feel like strength. You'll look around and realize that the air is lighter, the nights are calmer, and your spirit is finally still. That's when you'll know you made the right decision. Peace doesn't mean everything around you is perfect, but it means everything within you is anchored. And when you are anchored in peace, no storm can sink you, no lie can shake you, no betrayal can break you. That's why you must treasure it above proximity, because some people would rather see you close and chaotic than distant and peaceful. Some would rather have access to you even if it means robbing you of your rest. But you've got to decide, do I want their company or do I want my clarity? Peace is more precious than proximity. Growth requires separation. You cannot step into the next dimension of who you are while clinging to everything that once defined you. You cannot soar if you refuse to weights that keep you grounded. Growth is a process, and separation is part of that process. Just like a seed must separate from its shell to sprout, just like a chick must break away from its shell to live, just like a butterfly must fight its way out of the cocoon to fly, separation is not optional, it is necessary. The challenge is that separation never feels comfortable. It never feels convenient. It feels painful. It feels lonely. It feels confusing because you are letting go of people, places, and patterns that once gave you comfort. You're detaching from what was familiar, and the human heart craves familiarity even when it's toxic. That's why it's so hard to separate, because you're torn between the safety of the familiar and the uncertainty of the future. But growth doesn't happen in comfort zones. Growth doesn't come in safety. Growth comes when you step into the unknown and trust that what you're releasing cannot compare to what God is preparing. Sometimes God has to create separation for you because you won't do it on your own. He'll allow people to walk away. He'll allow doors to close. He'll allow relationships to crumble, not because he's punishing you, but because he's pruning you. You see, pruning looks like loss, but it's really making room for gain. A tree that is never pruned will grow wild, but it won't bear much fruit. A life that is never separated from dead weight will look full, but it won't flourish. Growth requires pruning, and pruning requires separation. You've been wondering why certain people drifted out of your life, why certain opportunities didn't last, why certain seasons ended abruptly. Could it be that God was separating you for growth? Could it be that what you thought was rejection was really redirection? Could it be that the tears you cried over who left were watering the soil for who's about to arrive? Separation hurts in the moment, but if you endure it, you'll see it was the very thing that made growth possible. And here's the truth. You can't carry everybody with you into destiny. You can love them, but you can't carry them. You can pray for them, but you can't backpack them, because not everybody can breathe at the altitude you're going to. Some people get dizzy when you start climbing. Some people panic when the pressure changes. Some people were only equipped for the ground level, and if you try to carry them higher, both of you will suffocate. That's why you've got to separate, not in arrogance, not in bitterness, but in wisdom. Because if you don't You'll stunt your growth trying to keep company with those who refuse to climb. It takes courage to separate. It takes courage to admit that certain conversations no longer feed you. It takes courage to acknowledge that certain circles no longer fit you. It takes courage to say, I love you, but I can't stay here with you because there's something greater calling me. And it takes maturity to do it without announcing it, without trying to convince people to understand. Growth doesn't always need a declaration. Sometimes it just needs a decision. You don't have to explain why you're separating. Your fruit will prove why it was necessary. Think about the caterpillar. It doesn't hold a meeting with the other caterpillars to explain why it's going into the cocoon. It doesn't write a farewell letter to justify why it's pulling away. It simply separates, goes into the dark, undergoes the struggle, and emerges with wings. The separation looked strange, it looked silent, it looked lonely, but it was the only way to transform. That's what growth looks like. That's what separation feels like. And when you finally emerge, the very people who questioned your silence will have to marvel at your wings. So don't fight the separation. Don't resist the pruning. Don't cling to what God is cutting, because what feels like loss is actually gain. What feels like subtraction is actually multiplication. What feels like the end is actually the beginning. Growth requires separation, and if you are bold enough to let go, you will discover that everything you released was nothing compared to everything you are about to receive. Growth requires separation.